Today we're covering training movements, not muscles. So we were just joking about chest day and biceps day and those sorts of things. When you're producing an athlete, those sorts of things are largely irrelevant. It's a good way of putting on muscle mass. It's a good way of making a bodybuilder when you're trying to produce an athlete or someone that's going to work well day to day. The idea of training a muscle is completely off the mark, and we'll talk about why. So we're going to cover the joint by joint approach, which you should be getting pretty familiar with now. We're going to talk about, and this is going to justify training movements, not muscles, a little bit. We're going to talk about the adaptations to strength training, what they actually are, and you'll see how few of them are actual local muscle adaptations, essentially. We're going to talk about the SAID principle, and we're going to go through a couple of practical examples. Essentially, if you take one message out of all of these shoots that we do, this is probably, in mine, be the most important. I may say that every week, but yeah, this is probably the biggest take-home message for mine. That's true. So every joint, we've talked about joint by joint approach, every joint can be categorized by the primary role of stability or mobility. It's not that black and white. It's not, look at the lumbar spine, the lower back region, for example. A lot of the people I see clinically with sore lower backs actually need to improve the mobility in their spine a little bit. So if they've got a chronic low back over several years, they probably avoided movement in their back completely, and they'll have this nice, or not nice, this just rigid, stiff lower back region. So clinically, I may take other approaches with this. Another nice, perfect example of it not being black and white is you look at the hip. The hip primarily needs to be mobile, but how often do we talk about hip stability, for example? So you do need a large element of stability through the hip as well. So it's not black and white, but it's a really nice place to start. You're wondering about the human body and, oh, what should I be doing with this joint? Even it's the way of taking yourself through your warm-up. I always have people say to me, oh, what comes next in the warm-up? There's no sequence, really. There's an overall outline, but what exercises you choose to plug into that outline are up to you. And it's how I always make sure I cover everything in the warm-up from a mobility perspective. I've got to hit the ankle, it's going to be mobile. Ankle's going to be mobile, hip needs to be mobile, thoracic spine needs to be mobile. So I'm going to make sure I knock off those major ones during the warm-up, essentially. It also goes further than that picture, if you like. The foot needs to be stable, the big toe joint needs to be mobile. Okay? We've talked about if you alter any one of those things, you change the whole structure completely. So if you've got a hip that's stable, it's not mobile, then people are probably going to end up with a hypermobile lower back and likely to have end up with low back. Makes sense? So if you can get people in that, to fit that picture, you're probably going to have a pretty good athlete, someone that doesn't get a lot of injuries. This is just a cheeky example of getting my son in the slides. When I took this picture, was 3. Look at that deep squat. So, firstly, this is an example of how we lose function. We don't gain function. We don't have to teach people function. We need to reteach them function. They had it to start with. I didn't have him train in deep squats from when he was a baby. He just figured this stuff out. And if you go through that joint, your joint by joint approach, his ankle is mobile. To allow him to get down. Look at the mobility he's got going on through his hips. If you look carefully, you can see nice thoracic extension in order to get up that high as well. And look at that overhead position. He won't be able to get there if he doesn't have good thoracic extension, and that's becoming a massive issue in our modern society that we're all stuck here, so we can't get those arms up. We need that thoracic extension and that mobility through the thoracic spine in order to get that thing going. Okay, so now if we move on to the adaptations to strength training, you should have seen this in your sports science degrees. This is the backbone of most exercise prescription, I think. If you haven't seen this, I hope you just weren't paying attention. Essentially, this is the adaptations to strength training if they can be grouped into muscle hypertrophy or neural adaptation. Pretty much all of the adaptations can be put into those 2 categories. So local muscle hypertrophy, you can see how long that actually takes to become the major factor. So that dotted line going straight up and down is about 6 to 8 weeks. The point at which hypertrophy passes neural adaptation is 12 weeks. So it takes 12 weeks for hypertrophy to become the dominant factor in adaptation strength training. How long do people generally spend on a program?
3 to 4 weeks.
About 6 weeks. Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks is okay as well, but about 6 weeks. What happens, so I said that dotted line is about 6 to 8 weeks. What happens at that point? What's happening to the dotted line? It plateaus. So why do we change at 6 to 8 weeks? Hopefully because of that. But to be honest, did you know that before then? that's why we changed to 6 to 8 weeks, or did you just do it because we need a bit of variety in our lives? So there's this rule that we have within strength and conditioning basically that we're getting towards that 4 to 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, depending on who you are, that range, you need a new programming. This is the science behind it. And is it hypertrophy reasons or is it neural adaptation reasons? So if you think about training muscle, not a movement, if you're doing bicep curls to get big biceps, and your adaptation in the first 12 weeks is primarily going to be the nervous system getting better at doing that movement. It's not the muscle growing. So in terms of the major improvements you get from strength training, if you look at overall strength as well, where does the most rapid increase happen? At the start when you're getting all your neural adaptation as well. The major adaptation is going to be the nervous system getting better. So if I'm doing this, how often do I do this in sport? Maybe after the match I might do a few, but we know that's not great for recovery. But I never do that. So if I'm training isolated muscles, I'm going to get really efficient at doing this. It doesn't make me really any better at doing anything else. Remember, the brain likes to recruit movement patterns of movement. It goes, I need to recruit these muscles together to create that. Yeah? So that's that concept of training movement, not muscles. And then you've got not just, you think about what we do with athletic development, we teach people movements, but then we make them strong through those movements. So we're going to train a vertical jump. A vertical jump is just a fancy deadlift. Yeah? Then we're going to bring them in here and we're going to teach them to apply more force. We're going to make their nervous system more efficient at producing more force through a vertical jump pattern. Does that make sense?
So why kinetic slings have become so popular in the past few years?
Slings are really popular because do you remember in primary school there was that song, your knee bone's connected to your shin bone? That dude's a sneaky genius. That's how the body works. It's all tied together. It's been said that up to 40% of your force generation can come from fascial tension. So if you want to talk about slings and chains of movement, you can get if you go from using isolated muscles to having efficient coordination of the fascia and the muscles all together, you can increase by 40% just by improving the way your body works together. So that's why it's all about. I don't think it's necessarily understood very well on the maths, but I've said for the last 6 months, and hopefully it proves to be the case, I think fascia and breathing are going to be the huge things in the health industry in the next 5 years. Okay. So adaptations to strength training. These are all the adaptations you're going to do. I'll push the other factors. These are the major ones. The major 4. You've got disinhibition of inhibitory mechanisms. It sounds counterintuitive, but if we go back to a bicep curl for an example for a second, because it's simple. When you're trying to create that bicep curl, there's an element of your brain, your body's producing force, the information, the proprioception coming in from the muscle spindles, the Golgi tendon organs goes, there's high tension coming through these zones here. So if I'm doing a bicep curl, I've got high tension through this muscle here, I'm producing a lot of force. Initially, I need to contract the triceps, so because if I produce too much force, the elbow's going to snap off, I don't feel safe. So I'm going to get this co-contraction to create stability through the elbow joint. Now as you do that movement over and over again, the body learns, okay, this is what Matt's asking me to do. I need to become more efficient at this, so I'm going to turn off the stuff that's slowing, that's making this movement more efficient, less efficient. So in that case, as a most basic example, I'm going to switch off the antagonist, for example. And in turning off the antagonist, then I'm getting less inhibition into the agonist. Does that sort of make sense? Because the other thing is when you contract a muscle, you get some inhibition across that as well. The classic one of this is how many people do you know that have tight hip flexors and they can't contract their glute? You can get them to squeeze them up till the cows come home, they can't turn it on very efficiently. That's because you can't override the central nervous system going, I have tension here, I don't want you on, because I don't want to fight that tension and create even more tension. Does that make sense? But through strength training, if you reset that pattern a little bit and you train that, and you strengthen the glutes, the body will naturally turn down the hip flexors to a degree. Yeah? So it's turning off the inhibitory mechanisms. Intermuscular and intramuscular coordination, I sort of touched this a little bit here as well. Things like reducing co-contraction of agonist-antagonists. The rate at which the nervous system is firing to reduce efficient muscle contraction. What muscle specifically, what synergist is turning on in order to create efficient movement. All these factors are nervous system adaptations to strength training. And then you've got hypertrophy musculotendinous fusion. So basically the muscle will be able to generate and tolerate more force. Okay? Which is handy. You sort of need it. Yeah? And then there's a series of other factors as well. They're largely controversial and haven't been backed up in the research, but it's important to know them as well, obviously. Any questions on that? I think I've had this in before, haven't I? I've had this quote before. Really? Probably my favourite quote when it comes to strength. This is a guy by the name of Franz Bosch who's really highly regarded in terms of teaching athletic movement patterns and running, and he probably brought the world of athletic movement patterns into team sports first. He's the guru. I don't know if anyone read the paper that Adelaide Football Club had a guru of athletic movement come out last year and teach them how to run better. That was this guy. Funnily enough, that's where he's the guy we've been getting all of our stuff off for years. So this is the stuff that we've been feeding into the school is now being brought out as the guru to help train the Adelaide Football Club to run. That's off topic. Essentially, strength training is coordination-based training with increased resistance. So strength training isn't just making your muscles huge. Strength training is improving the coordination of you as a system. So how you use your body as a system and how that's coordinated is what gets more efficient when you strength train. And you just add resistance to that to demand increased efficiency or increased coordination. Does that make sense? When I first read that, I was like, whatever, guy, and I kept turning. And then I heard it again another time and I was like, actually, that is spot on. And the more you look into it, the more you see that, again, the adaptations that we're getting with strength training are, in fact, just coordination. We're just getting more coordinated at whatever you're asking your body to do. So, again, if you take a bicep curl, for example, I'm just getting more coordinated at doing this. That has no transfer to sport. But if I'm getting coordinated, like we talked about, through a deadlift and being able to produce more force more efficiently into the ground, I'm going to produce a greater vertical jump. The said principle for mind, this is where we're going to go next. This is where it comes to training movements, not muscles. You get a specific adaptation to impose demand, is what SAID stands for. Basically, you will get better at whatever you practice. So, if you're training functional movement and getting strong through functional movements that can be transferred to sport, you will get better at those things. If you isolate muscle groups, you will get better at moving isolated muscles. Yeah? So you think about the purpose of clams or TheraBand external rotations for joint stability. What is the demand that's being placed on the body in that situation? Is there any demand for stability doing a TheraBand external rotation? No, not at all. So what are you doing? You're strengthening the rotator cuff. TheraBand external rotations for mine are the sit-ups of the shoulder. You're training stabilizers, but you're not training them to stabilize. So you're making them stronger. So there's a role for them, for example. If you've got a weaker rotator cuff because following surgery there was some inhibition and that your rotator cuff is now weaker, by all means do some rotator cuff exercises to strengthen the rotator cuff. But if you want to improve stability of the shoulder, you need to impose an unstable force and demand stability out of it. And I'll show you that when we get to our practical demonstration. Similarly with clams, so I'm improving hip stability. You're just lying on your side externally rotating your hip. So you're getting better at lying on your side and externally rotating your hip. Yes, your external rotators of your hip are stabilizers, but you're not getting any hip stability out of it. Again, I'll show you examples of what I do. So the said principle further on from that is if you want to get strong through functional patterns, you need to be training functional patterns, not isolating. If you want to improve segmental stability, you need to provide an unstable force to that segment and demand that the body stabilizes. Okay? So examples, we talked about TheraBand external rotations. Can I get a guinea pig here? Anyone? Luke? Good man. Go lie down in front. Okay, you actually listen to you, please. Lay down on the floor for me. So if we want to improve glenohumeral joint stability, place one hand straight up in the air for me. Good. Grab hold of this sucker. Good. Back. No problem. I wouldn't normally sit over his head like this, but I'm trying to stay out of the way of the camera. Can you guys see from there, there's a really subtle wobble at the moment. So he's having to control that. Okay. Now if you internally externally rotate your hand for me slightly. See how as he's rotating now that wobble is increasing a little bit? Go a little bit faster for me. Good. So now he's having to try and control an unstable force. Yeah? So this is a nice example. As he rotates here, you could argue, yes, the rotator cuff's rotating his shoulder, and that's what we're getting out of that. But more importantly, as he rotates, he's changing where this is aligned over his shoulder, and so he has to fire a different muscle or change the intensity that he's getting out of different muscles in order to create stability through the bending movement. Does that make sense? You right-handed? Yeah. Let's try that. Yeah. A little bit more wobbly.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, rotate. So compare that there. Now you think about what's happening as he's doing this exercise. The nervous system is constantly getting sensory input from the shoulder, from his eyes, about where this is and what he has to then, and then the brain is having to process that information and send back what he has to recruit in order to remain stable. Compare that to doing this, where the body is just going, I need to activate my external rotators as hard as I can in order to move. Now, Luke being a footballer goes up to punch a football on Saturday. Now, instead of just doing this, we've trained the nervous system to control and reactively adjust what muscles are being activated in order to stabilise the shoulder. Which one do you reckon is going to have better stability outcomes? Yeah? So specific adaptation imposed demands. Now, if we go to the core, we talked a bit about anti-extension. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah? So training basically muscles in this section here that when you go through university textbooks, they flex the spine. Yeah? Now the primary role of the core first is you need to be able to control movement before you can generate movement. So the first role of the core is to prevent movement. So if we were to do a sit-up, for me, Luke, you won't do many. What are we getting here, stability or mobility? Through the lumbar spine. Is it moving or not? Move up and down for me. Is moving or not? Yeah. So you think joint by joint approach, is the lumbar spine supposed to be stable or mobile? Stable. So what's he getting? Mobility. Are we training what we want to train there? No. If he was to roll over into a plank, yep. He's having the resist extension here, so the same muscle group is on, but now we're getting stability, yeah, which is what we want to train. If we were to take that a step further now, and do a rollout. You want to go these way?
Okay, like 1 or 2. I think.
Don't hurt yourself. It's my disclaimer, you hurt yourself now, touch not to.
Okay.
So as he extends here, we're getting mobility through the shoulder. We should be getting mobility through his hips. We should be getting stability through here, which he's lost control of. Come back up. Let me have a go. So as we extend, we're getting mobility through the hips and the shoulders, and I should be keeping a fairly stable lumbar spine as I go out here. That makes sense. So again, you go back to our joint by joint approach, and our set principle, something like a rollout is a far better way of training the core how we want it to function compared to doing sit-ups. Make sense? And lastly, I think we're running out of time now, but if we had planks, so Luke, lie down again for me. Climb your side.
That's all right.
Yeah. Just bring your knees up there for me. Good. Yeah, perfect, good. Keep your feet together. Lift this top knee for me.
Lift it up.
Knee your feet together. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So in this position here, we're strengthening the external rotator of the hip, which is a good thing. Yeah. There's absolutely no stability demand here. Yes or no?
Sorry?
When you jump up now, jump onto one leg on there. Good. Right, just lift that front up now. Holding. Okay, feel how all the body weight's back here. Stay there. Now I want you just to walk this foot slowly across this way. This way. This way. Good. Good. You can stay on the ground now. Good. Alright, see how he's got a slight wobble now? We're going to half kneeling as a posture later. One of the later shoots. It's what we call a transitional posture. You can also see now he's cheating, he's trying to create work. Yep. Bring that front foot further forward. Good. So we've got that little subtle wobble. This is harder than it looks, and Luke's doing a really good job. You can take that foot that way, touch more, make it harder. Good, yeah, good. So in a transitional posture like half kneeling, what can stabilise him? What can hold him upright? So remember, the back knee is what's weight bearing, the front foot should be doing nothing. He keeps trying to lean forward to load on his hip flexors. The tight hip flexors don't flex. So this should be weight bearing, this should be doing nothing. What can stabilise him? Can my ankle do anything? Not really. It should be load bearing through the knee. So what's next up? So it's a really nice position to get into if I wanted to work on hip stability in a nice hip position, because the other thing is, by being half kneeling, I can't have any trend elbow going on because of this ago. Yeah, so I'm going to put them in a position that I want them in, and then we're training joint stability. Yeah, so you're looking at the hip and the core, I suppose. And then from there you can do all sorts of stuff, like we would give you back that kettlebell. I'll show this to you like that. We would give you back the kettlebell and do some things like halos, where you're then changing where the weight's distributed. So as I'm over here, that weight's pulling it that way, obviously. Again, I'm having to reactively change what I'm recruiting, or how much I'm recruiting it in order to stay upright. That makes sense? So the idea of training what exactly I want to create. So this is probably not perfect for the joint by joint approach, because I'm training hip stability when primarily we need it to be mobile, but hip stability is probably the biggest one where it's not like hip stability is one of the biggest factors you'll see. How many people you see stand on one leg and then keep strong leg? Yes. Does that make sense? If you've got time now, we'll spend a couple of minutes particularly practicing this sort of thing. So weight off the front foot, walk that foot across, do a better job than that, try to stay up. Okay, as soon as you see the person starting to move through their foot, they're cheating and they're using this. They need to be staying there. Okay. Let it go.
Just got this, my mate coming in tonight.